All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're going to explore one of the absolute most profound conversations in human history. We're looking at how the ancient Greek concept of longing, specifically that intense upward-reaching desire they called Eros, clashes and then ultimately converges with the biblical vision of love known as Agape. I mean, for thousands of years, we've been trying to figure out what love actually is, right? Why do we ache for something more? How are we supposed to reach the divine? Well, today we're going to visually unpack how two foundational texts of Western civilization answer those exact questions, but in radically different ways.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the banquet of love, then climb the ladder of beauty, compare Eros and Agape, look at ascent versus divine descent, check out the early church response, and finally, wrap up by answering the human longing. Let's get into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the Banquet of Love, setting the stage in Athens around 416 BCE. Now, what's really wild here is the tragic irony underlying the symposium. Plato actually wrote this retrospectively, setting the dramatic date right around 416 BCE. And if you look at the middle of this timeline, Athens is at the absolute height of its imperial power. You've got this group of brilliant, wealthy guys gathered at the house of a playwright named Agathon to celebrate his recent victory. It's this triumphant, joyous banquet. But Plato's original readers knew exactly what happened next. Just 3 years later, in 413 BCE, Athens suffers this catastrophic military disaster in the Sicilian expedition. And get this, that expedition was championed by Alcibiades, who is literally one of the main drunken characters at this very banquet. Fast forward to 399 BCE, and the city executes Socrates, who is the philosophical anchor of the evening. So this beautiful, brilliant conversation about love is happening literally right on the edge of total civic doom.
You know, a typical symposium was a structured drinking party. Usually it was all about games, music, and a lot of physical indulgence. But here, these guys basically take a vote to kick out the entertainment, skip the party, and do philosophy homework instead. They take turns giving these elaborate speeches praising Eros, or love. They essentially take a super familiar cultural institution and flip it into a profound vehicle for metaphysical inquiry. It's a real game changer.
Moving right along to Section 2, the ladder of beauty and Diotima's philosophical ascent.
In the text, a woman named Diotima introduces this incredible concept called the ladder of beauty. It's basically a staircase for human desire, showing how we're supposed to climb from basic physical attraction all the way up to eternal truth. She explains that true love isn't about getting stuck on just one person. It's a progression. You start at step 1, loving one beautiful physical body. But then you kind of zoom out and realize the beauty in that one body is mathematically and aesthetically tied to all beautiful bodies, moving you to step 2. From there, you realize the mind is way greater than matter. So you climb to step 3, loving beautiful souls. Then you elevate that desire to the actual structures that create good souls, like beautiful laws and knowledge, at step 4. And finally, you hit the summit, beauty itself, an eternal, unchanging, abstract form that literally never fades.
So the big takeaway here is that for Plato, love is fundamentally about an upward climb, and it's completely fueled by what we lack. Eros is portrayed almost like a restless spirit, constantly reaching for what it doesn't have. We feel empty. We know we're mortal. And so we use Eros as the rocket fuel to propel our souls up and out of the messy material world, straight into the pure, immaterial realm of the divine.
Which brings us to Section 3, Eros versus Agape, where we look at two completely different visions of love. Let's pin down our terms here. Keep this in mind. Eros is essentially you and me reaching up into the heavens to try and grab perfection. It is entirely motivated by a deficit. Think about it. You only desire what you don't already have, right? Eros loves because it looks at the object, sees that it's beautiful, and realizes it needs that object to be complete. But then, the New Testament drops in with agape, and it is the exact opposite direction. Agape is not driven by lack at all. Texts like 1 John explicitly say God is love. He's totally self-sufficient. He doesn't love humanity because he's lonely or because he needs us to complete some cosmic puzzle. It's an uncreated overflow. It's a self-donating kind of love that sacrifices and moves downward toward the beloved, completely regardless of whether the beloved actually deserves it. This is the ultimate dilemma. Are we sweating and climbing a ladder towards some cold, impersonal concept, or is a personal God climbing down a ladder to reach us? See, Plato's ultimate reality is an abstract form. It doesn't know you, it definitely doesn't speak to you, and it certainly isn't going to bleed for you. You have to claw your way up to it through rigorous discipline. The biblical narrative, on the other hand, presents a God who is deeply personal, who actually initiates the relationship, and who willingly steps down into the dirt of human history.
Let's unpack that further in Section 4, Ascent versus Divine Descent, the Theological Inversion.
Look at how the mechanics of salvation completely flip here. Remember Diotima's ladder from earlier? The whole point was to escape your physical flesh to reach the immaterial truth. But then you read John 1:14, and the eternal Logos, the Word, actually becomes flesh. The divine puts on a physical body. And then in Romans it says God loves the unworthy. He loves sinners. Eros could literally never do that because Eros is only attracted to beauty and merit. Then you have Philippians 2 describing Christ emptying himself to move downward into mortality. It's a total contradiction of the philosopher trying to grasp upward. And finally, they totally disagree on the core human problem. For Plato, we're just ignorant. We just need better education so we can climb better. But for the biblical authors, we've actively broken a relationship through sin, and we desperately need a rescuer to come down and pull us out.
If you just glance at this comparison, the contrast is pretty staggering. The solitary, mind-over-matter vibe of the symposium gets completely upended by the physical, communal restoration we see at the end of the biblical narrative. Look at the ultimate goals. The Platonic philosopher ends up totally alone, just silently gazing at this abstract concept. But the Bible ends in Revelation with this massive, noisy, communal wedding feast, the marriage of the Lamb. And instead of treating the human body like some gross temporary container you throw away, the biblical endgame is bodily resurrection, where physical matter is restored and glorified forever.
So how did history handle this clash? That's Section 5, the early church response, synthesizing Athens and Jerusalem.
Augustine really nails this synthesis with his famous line from his Confessions. He actually agrees with Plato on a fundamental level. Humans do have this deep, restless ache for transcendence. Plato hit the nail on the head. We are desiring creatures, and we always feel like we're missing something. But Augustine argues that some abstract form of beauty is never going to cure that restlessness. Only a personal, loving God can actually fix it.
These early church fathers didn't just toss Plato in the trash. No, they masterfully wove his understanding of human longing together with the gospel as the ultimate cure. Justin Martyr thought God had scattered these seeds of truth in Greek philosophy, which is why Plato got so close to reality. Origen took Diotima's whole ladder concept, but pointed it at a person, Jesus Christ, instead of a concept. Then you have Gregory of Nyssa, who came up with this brilliant idea called epictasis. He basically said, because God is infinite, our upward climb actually never stops. We just keep eternally straining forward into deeper and deeper love. And Augustine? He loved Platonism, but he dealt the final critique. He basically said the Platonists were just too proud. They loved the lofty heights of philosophy, but they absolutely could not stomach the scandalous humility of a God who would stoop down, become flesh, and die on a cross.
And that leads to our final section, Section 6, Answering the Human Longing, and where we actually find rest.
The absolutely crucial thing to remember here is that Plato was an incredible diagnostician. He perfectly identified the symptom, that unquenchable desire we all have for more. We all feel that upward pull, right? We're all trying to climb our own ladders, whether we're using relationships or career success or art, hoping we can finally grab onto something eternal that won't just fade away on us. But the biblical texts step in with a radically different medicine. They're telling us that the burden of reaching the divine isn't actually on our shoulders. You don't have to somehow climb your way out of your own humanity.
So I'm going to leave you with this to chew on as you think about your own restless heart. If Plato was right about how deep our longing goes, but the biblical writers were right about the direction the rescue comes from, well, that changes literally everything about how we pursue meaning. Are you exhausting yourself trying to climb the ladder of beauty, or are you willing to accept the descending grace of Agape? Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating intersection of ideas with me in this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and for sure, keep seeking the truth.